All right, this is a test to see if this program works. I'm going to try to do the Q&A from today to see if we can record and you can hear me, get your feedback, etc. All right, so question one, how will learning about synthesis help us in the end? Synthesis is one of our three major goals for the year: synthesis, rhetorical analysis, and argument. And we're going to be learning about each one of those, getting stronger and stronger with each of those skills as we go through the semester. Right now, you might be wondering, okay, I sort of get what synthesis is. I don't really get how this applies to the test. For right now, I want you to think of synthesis being a muscle in your head, and we're weightlifting. Okay, we're practicing with synthesis and weightlifting. Later on, I'm going to show you how to synthesize in a particular way, and if I've done my job correctly, then you guys will be able to lift those weights when we get there. What got you so inspired to incorporate philosophy into AP Lang and make this class different from the others? Um, Imagine a mountain that you're going to be asked to climb. It appears as though two teachers walk up the north face of the mountain, and two other teachers march up the south face of the mountain. It's the same mountain, it's just a different path. There's different scenery, there are different challenges, and when all four classes make it to the top, they're not going to look the same, and that's okay. But they'll be able to hopefully perform well on the exam with the skills that they've learned. Holden needs a hug and to go home. That sounds funny, but I think it's actually really deep. One of the things I hope to communicate about these different grade 1, 2, and 3 thinkers is that it's sort of like Hemingway's Havana, Cuba. Grade 3 is safe, and it's beautiful, and it's wonderful, and it's vibrant, and it's exciting, but it's a little boring. You're going to be tempted as you get older to leave Havana and to venture off into the ocean, into very deep waters. And that is cool, and it requires a lot of skill, but it's scary, and you're alone. And I think what Holden hasn't realized yet is that he's becoming a person who thinks for himself, but he's getting exhausted. He needs to go home. He needs to go, but not literally to his parents, although that might be true. He needs to go back to Havana. He needs to go back to society and take a break, catch his breath. And then, if he wants to, and I guess he does, he can go back out and he'll be fresh. And that applies to you. If life is stressing you out and you feel alone, go back home, catch your breath, and then try again later. How do you defend yourself against a straw man argument? It's both easy and hard. The easy part is you just have to notice it's happening. Notice that someone is not being genuine when they're trying to hear you. They're creating a silly version of yourself. I know what a straw man is, and I get duped by them all the time. When sometimes someone will be arguing with me and they'll make me feel stupid. It's not. Sometimes I deserve that because I've said something stupid, but frequently it's I wasn't carefully listening. They came up with a dumb version of me, and they showed me the dumb version of me. And there's some truth. There's some dumb things about me, right? But they're crushing the weakest version of me, and that's not not very nice. So spotting them is really what it is. You can call someone out. You can say you're not summarizing me. You're pretending. Would you think I'm dumb? I didn't say that. And if they continually do it, and some people do it all the time, explain to them at some point, you straw man, every time we argue, you straw man my opinion. You've never really tried to do a good job of listening to my strongest points. You just sidestep them and you pretend I'm something sillier than I am. So that's one way. But the other, just listen and hear. And if someone's straw manning you, you'll be able to defend against what you notice. Can movies do something differently than fiction books? Yes, and that is a more tempting question than you realize because, as you know, I'm a cinema studies teacher. I would love to get distracted by a question like that, and we could spend a day or two in film if you guys all desire. Why are all the females in Catcher in the Rye like prostitutes? There are no empowered women at all? That's a great observation. Be very careful. Holden is not quite developed as a thinker yet, and he has some very strong misogyny against women. We don't have to believe him, okay? These women he's looking at, they could be empowered, but he would prefer to, in some weird way, straw man the woman and make the woman look like a dumb, stupid version. Um, Holden is looking around and creating straw mans of everything he sees. Salinger's not doing that, though. Salinger's showing us almost a what not to do. Salinger's no straw manner, okay? But we have to be careful. Holden is a flawed individual and he has some bad ideas, okay? He's not being fair to women. When are we going to start essay writing? Month. Well, okay, we've been doing it sort of, but remember we're starting from small stuff and going larger, so we're going to get into papers with a vengeance at some point here. Do you have any tips for synthesis? First, recognize what it is. You have to know what it is first before you can practice it. Second of all, read more and build your background knowledge. Um, if you read a poem and you only know two things, that poem can remind you of those two things. If you read 1,000 things and then you read a poem, that poem can remind you of 324 things. So the more you know, the more you can see dots connecting everywhere. It takes time, and that's part of what we mean when we say the difference between smart and wise. Smart means you have lots of data points in your head. Wise means you know how to connect those data points productively. Did you read Catcher in the Rye in high school? I did. I did it. A teacher inspired me to read on my own, and I read 9 books in 11 days on my own. I don't know what it was. I read nonstop for days and days and days and days. Catcher in the Rye, I read on my own. I thought it was a very powerful book, but I had no help about what to look for. I remember thinking it was a pretty interesting book, but then I moved on. You know, is it really worth it to pay? Okay, one class I talked to about IQ level. Um, Period one, I talked to about IQ. So I don't want to discuss that right now just because that won't make sense to 50% of you. Um, oh, this person writes, almost calling me out. Freud was a disgusting human being, and he had some very bad ideas about women and children and the subconscious mind. And this person's calling me out. Why do you? It seems like you idolize this Freud guy. Well, I don't idolize Freud, no. But one thing I want to point out is that almost all of our historical figures are incredibly flawed individuals. And if we held them up to the bar of perfection, we wouldn't be able to use anything that they've said before. I mean, some of the, you guys know, George Washington had tons of skeletons in his closet, tons of terrible things. We can still learn from him. There's some people in modern day that we really idolize, and I don't want to name them by names. I don't want to offend them, but think about someone who we all think is like from the past who everyone really has a high self-esteem or high esteem for. Just scratch past the surface. Just they are riddled with flaws. Some of them disgusting, a lot of them, and that's the human condition. So Freud was flawed. I disagree with a lot of the stuff that he said, but he wrote the playbook. He coined the terms. He wrote the vocab words. So to talk about psychology is to use words that um, he used. So you have to grapple with Freud. You can hate him, but you have to grapple with him.